What's going on, my North County fam? This is your girl Kelly here to give you the rundown on what happened in St. Louis County government this past week, and here's what you need to know. So first, the St. Louis County whistleblower protections legislation was up for final passage during this past Tuesday night's county council meeting. So if it feels like you've heard this topic before, you ain't tripping. You have, because this legislation in some form was passed by the county council not once, but twice. And it was vetoed by the county executive. Not once, but twice. So yes, you ain't tripping. You have heard this topic of discussion before. And so during the county council meeting, there was a new piece of legislation regarding this topic up for final passage. So what makes this bill any different from the others that were vetoed by the county executive? I know inquiring minds want to know. So what makes this bill different is that if passed, it will go to the voters to decide to change the charter, allowing for whatever is in the bill to take effect. A ballot measure, if passed by the county council, cannot be vetoed by the county executive, y'all. So what did some other council members have to say about the bill? So I know Councilwoman Clancy, she one of the most vocal members speaking to this bill. She had some concerns, and she made it clear that she's all for updating the whistleblowers protections policy for St. Louis County employees. Check out this clip as she breaks down why she has issues with the bill.
As I shared with the chairwoman when we met last week, I'm willing to set aside some of my policy differences on the matter, but there is one item that I can't ignore. Who is covered by this policy and who isn't? Let me elaborate. What if a county council employee wants to report misconduct to the county executive, the personnel director, or the Civil Service Commission? Are they protected? It doesn't appear they are. Hypothetically, we have a situation where an employee can talk to the press, but they can't talk to the personnel director. But most importantly, there is much ambiguity about whether or not this proposal applies to the police department, our largest department in the county, and arguably the very place where most whistleblowing and discrimination suits originate. Based on the discussion over the past few months, it appears that there's even a difference of opinions among the council. And it was reported yesterday in the Post-Dispatch that even the Police Officers Association is requesting a legal opinion on the matter. So they're unclear too. If it purportedly does apply to police, would the police officer file their appeal in the Civil Service Commission or in the Board of Police Commissioners, or both? It's not clear at all how this contradiction is resolved, which is more evidence that the proposal doesn't apply to police officers at all. That's a flag for me. My constituents sent me here because they believe in police reform, and they know I do too. And if the bill proponents are so adamant that this applies to police, why will the sponsor not specify this in the language of the bill? That's the request that I made when we met last week.
So after she provided her spiel or what have you, this is Councilwoman Days' response.
I want to be clear that we have been working on this for 14 months. And for 14 months, and none of these concerns came forward. For 14 months, I asked for the Human Relations Commission to come and help me with this language. Give me some language that works for you. For 14 months, I heard nothing from them. And for 14 months, well, I just say, let's say 12 months, I heard nothing from any member of this council. So in putting together this piece of legislation, I wanted you to know that I did accept two caveats that the Councilwoman Clancy asked for. And one was that all of the employees of St. Louis County would receive this information on a yearly basis. That was not included, and I thought that was good to hear, that we can have that and do that every year. So that's fine. So in that vein, yes, I was cooperating. The other thing was that we had a difference opinion in the length of time that either merit employee or a non-merit employee could file. And I had 30 days, and I think she had 100 days or 1 year. And so I acquiesce, and I think the longer that we have an opportunity to do this, the better off that we are. And so that is included in this legislation. I put this bill to before this council twice. Twice the county executive vetoed this legislation, and I did not have the votes to override that veto. So right now I am going to let the citizens of St. Louis County decide if they want to have whistleblower protection for all of its employees. And the last time I checked, police officers were employees of St. Louis County. So they are indeed included in this legislation.
So what was the final verdict? The bill was passed by everybody on the county council. And so FYI, this will be on the ballot for y'all to vote on in August. The second thing y'all need to know. So the bill adding 5 new positions and appropriating $420,000 to address problem properties in St. Louis County was up for final passage during the meeting as well. So I talked about this during last week's rundown, so I'm not going to go into great detail over it. But listen to Councilwoman Webb as she keeps it a buck about the legislation she co-sponsored with Councilman Tracus.
This legislation to provide additional staffing for the council's office was specifically for problem properties. No ands, ifs, and buts about it. There was going to be 2 attorneys, 2 paralegals, and 1 investigator. The legislation that I put forth had nothing to do with deputizing an investigator. The conversations that I have had with the chief, and then the follow-on conversations that Ms. Beth and the chief have had, was to clarify. I had no intention about deputizing anyone through this legislation. If you read the legislation, that word is never used. And so I want everybody to make sure that they hear me clearly, that that has nothing to do with this legislation. One more point. Last week, when there was passionate discussion about this legislation, I decided, first I asked for my colleague what was his pleasure. But then there was still vigorous conversation. And I decided to wait, allow us to digest the information, allow me to contact the chief of police so we can make an informed decision. All of that has happened. I have talked with my peers, and I believe that we're all on the same agenda.
So what was the final verdict? The bill was passed with Councilman Harder being the only no vote, as he expressed he still has issues with what this investigator, what they would be doing. And then the last thing y'all need to know, another bill up for final passage, which again, talked about this last week, will require the county council to approve any appointment made by the county executive. So Councilman Tracus, who expressed hella concerns with the language of this bill last week, he came forward with his own changes to the bill. So listen to this clip as Councilman Tracus breaks down the changes that he made to the bill.
This bill takes a good idea and makes it a great idea. Let me explain what happens here. No longer, if this bill is passed and the measure put before the voters and passed by the voters, will any county executive be able to appoint or nominate an appointee to a position as a department head or anything else, and have that person serve in an acting capacity prior to this council confirming that nominee. So instead of the current situation where the county executive can appoint or nominate someone and have that person serve in an acting capacity until this council acts on it, that will no longer be the case. If this measure passes, the county executive can nominate, but that person cannot serve as a director or on a board or commission unless and until this body confirms that person. Secondly, this bill provides that the council must act on that nomination within 30 days, similar to what the state legislature is required to do. The reason for that is we need to move these nominations. We can't have them sit as they've been sitting this year for months in some cases. Here, when the council acts, if that person is not confirmed, the county executive has to enter into a new nomination process, specifically naming a different individual for this council to consider. He or she would not be able to simply submit the same name for the same position. And lastly, if this council fails to act, fails to do its due diligence and vote to confirm or not confirm the individual nominated within 30 days, that person will be deemed confirmed because of the failure of the council to do its due diligence. So this bill addresses the concerns I have with the existing measure, Bill 130. I think it improves it, makes it much more efficient and effective.
So how the rest of the council feel about these changes? So Councilman Fitch, who sponsored the original bill, he wasn't feeling it. So these were a couple of his concerns. He said, first off, we just got this mug today. That's the issue. He also expressed that the changes that Trachis made to the actual language that will be on the ballot for voters to decide is confusing as hell. And he also said that, when I say he, I mean Fitch. Fitch said that he didn't understand why, if voters passed this, it would take effect on January 10th, 2023. And Fitch said, look, the legislation that I came forward with, if the voters approved it, it would take into effect right then and there. So what's up with that? So ultimately, the council approved Trachis' changes to the bill. And it was a split vote. It was 4-3. The folks that were for Trachis' changes to the bill were Councilman Trachis, Dunaway, Clancy, and Webb. And the three that were against the bill were Fitch, Harder, and Days. So Trachis decided to move forward with getting his tweaked bill finally passed during the council meeting, the county council meeting. And it was clear that Webb, she was the deciding vote. And so she was asking questions because, again, the legislation had just gotten to the council folks that day. So she still had some questions about some of the language and the differences in the bills. And again, it was clear that both Fitch and Trachis, they was trying to steer her, you know what I'm saying, in their respective directions with regards to the bill. So Webb had this to say. So listen to this clip.
This is my expectation. Last week, I asked Councilman Trachis and Councilman Fitch to work together to come up with a compromise so we could take a vote tonight and move forward. I, again, apologize for you all witnessing the sausage making, but it happens. But once again, Councilman Trachis and Councilman Fitch, could you all please work together and bring us back one bill to take a vote on? That's all I'm asking. And I understand the differences, but as legislators who've been doing this much longer than I've been doing it, I think that you all can come to a compromise. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilman Fitch.
I think we have the compromise. We just have to write it up and vote on it next week. It's there. Just like last week, we had this big discussion about adding these attorneys to the county counselor's office. You heard me speak against that.
Mm-hmm.
What did I do this week? I heard it. I listened to both sides, and I agreed to support that. It's no different in this particular case. That's how I see it.
Councilman Trachis.
There's no good faith here. There's no honest effort to work together, Councilwoman Webb. That's been demonstrated well over a year and a half. And so the question is, which bill is better? Which bill is more effective? Which bill limits the county executive, and which bill requires that this body act instead of leaving people in limbo for months?
So what was the final verdict? Well, y'all, the county council, they moved forward and they approved, they finally passed Councilman Trachis' bill, with that tweaked language in it, again, with that 4-3, that same 4-3 split. So FYI, this measure will be on the ballot for y'all to vote on in August. So don't tell me you ain't know about it, because I told you. So that's all I have for you this week, y'all. Please stay safe out there, and you will see me soon. Peace.